According to research, community mental health improves following a natural disaster. Neighbors pull together, strangers become family, resilience surfaces in the most unexpected places. Even disaster mental health workers experience a false sense of intimacy with coworkers and community. These findings appear consistently across the literature on disaster recovery. My experience in the field tells a more complicated story. Chapter 1: Into the Storm. In 1994, I joined a mental health team deployed to the San Fernando Valley following the Northridge earthquake. Our post-vention mission carried an optimistic name, Project Rebound. I loved that name, Rebound, as if healing from catastrophe operated like a basketball off a backboard, clean and predictable. I called my aunt before we flew out. She was always my anchor, always encouraging. A tremendous storm was building outside as we spoke. "I don't know if I like the idea of you flying through a lightning storm to land in a disaster," she said. "Don't worry, I will be fine." I always said that back then. The flight featured a spectacular lightning show off the starboard side of the plane. Rain hammered the windows. I was young and invincible, lit up by pure adventure. Danger simply had no address in my awareness back then. Chapter 2: The Team. We landed and assembled inside the terminal. The team divided into 6 pairs, each assigned to a DAC, Disaster Application Center, where earthquake survivors came to apply for relief assistance. Our days started at 7:30 a.m. Our team dinners ran until midnight. Days and nights merged into a cycle that lasted 14 days. Our first night at the scene, my roommate set a pair of earplugs on my nightstand. "I snore," she said. "You might need these." I waved them off. "Don't worry about it, I'm used to loud snoring." 3 hours later, I shot straight out of bed, heart pounding, completely disoriented. The sound coming from across the room defied all natural explanation. The sounds were reminiscent of a horror movie and a freight train, supernatural sounds that had no business existing in a motel room in the San Fernando Valley. Pumped up with adrenaline, I was ready for our first day. Chapter 3: Dr. Todd. My DAC partner was Dr. Todd, a psychologist with 25 years of experience and genuine professional notoriety. A veteran and exactly the kind of steady, seasoned presence a younger clinician welcomes in the field. His experience did not include disaster work, however. Dr. Todd wore a beige trench coat every single day. He had a dark brown handlebar mustache that belonged firmly in 1974. He looked exactly like Columbo, the rumpled television detective who always had one more question. On our first morning, the team captain dropped us at the center and moved on to another location. Close to 400 people moved through that DAC daily, survivors carrying loss and exhaustion in their faces, roaming the center with reams of paperwork to file for services, people who were lost and struggling. I circulated the floor, moving from person to person, conducting assessments, offering information and holding space. Hours passed. Where the hell is Dr. Todd? It was near the end of a 12-hour shift and I needed a break. I started looking for Dr. Todd. I stopped by the Small Business Administration table, the IRS, the food bank, and the Red Cross. No one had seen him. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something beige moving inside the food pantry. It was Dr. Todd. I stepped inside, grinning. "Are you in here hiding?" The look on his face said everything. Disaster work was not for everyone. For 2 weeks, Dr. Todd hid in the food pantry while I worked the floor, tired, but enjoying the people, their stories, and the opportunity to help. 400 people and only one clinician on the floor. I welcomed the challenge, believing I was born for this service. Chapter 4: The Ones Nobody Saw. Here is what surprised me most. The earthquake survivors who came to the DAC were visibly and genuinely distressed. They carried real loss, yet the people I found myself most concerned about were the ones who worked there. The Small Business Administration staff, the IRS employees, People who lived in the affected area lost their own homes in some cases and still showed up every morning to process other people's paperwork. They were drowning quietly behind their desks. Then came the moment that has stayed with me for 30 years. A quiet young man sat in the center. He was slight, still, smiling softly. His brother stood beside him, clearly frightened, asking for help. The young man had been hearing voices. He presented no threat to anyone. He simply sat there, head tilted, gently, saying nothing. Then a nurse began screaming, "He's got a gun! He's got a gun!" There was no gun. Veterans in the room reacted instantly. Voices rose. The energy in the center shifted from distress to chaos in seconds. I moved to intervene, to de-escalate, to bring the temperature down. The young man remained still and calm throughout all of it. Then the LAPD arrived with batons drawn. They handcuffed him and took him away. He never said a word. Later, the nurse found me. She had served in combat. She carried PTSD she had never fully addressed. The young man had triggered a memory from 20 years prior on a different continent, a memory so vivid and so physical that it overrode everything she knew as a medical professional. She was a helper who needed help. Nobody had checked on her before she showed up to work that morning. Chapter 5: What the Dinner Table Revealed. Every night, our team gathered for a late debrief dinner. My roommate and I laughed genuinely, helplessly, sometimes until tears ran down our faces. Humor was how our overwhelm found its exit. We must have appeared callous to the colleagues sitting across from us, heads low over their plates, eyelids heavy, some quietly weeping into their exhaustion. We were not callous. We were all just processing the same impossible day through completely different nervous systems. That dinner table was a masterclass in how stress moves through people differently. Some collapse inward, some laugh until they cry, some hide in a food pantry. None of it means weakness, all of it means human. What Project Rebound taught me: we enter the helping professions with an implicit assumption that training confers stability, that credentials signal wholeness, that the helper arrives ready. The San Fernando Valley dismantled that assumption for me completely and permanently. Helpers carry their own histories into every disaster, their own losses, their own untreated wounds, their own limits. The nurse who screamed about a gun was not a bad clinician. She was an unaddressed survivor working in a system that never thought to ask how she was doing before handing her a badge and pointing her toward a room full of traumatized people. The research says community mental health improves after disaster, and perhaps it does eventually, collectively, statistically. What I know from the floor of a DAC in 1994 is that healing is messier, slower, and more human than any research summary captures. It looks like a psychologist in a trench coat finding his limit. It looks like a nurse screaming from a wound nobody saw. It looks like two women laughing in the dark because the alternative feels unsurvivable. It looks, in other words, exactly like us.